I have the honor of turning over the microphone to Candace Coffee, who has been an incredible patient advocate, not just for stem cell therapies, as was discussed earlier, but also for the world of neuromyelitis optica. I first met her here in Los Angeles, I think 2 years ago, or approximately, when we were on the hunt for patients to enroll in our biorepository. Candace has been an endless voice for neuromyelitis optica, an endless voice for stem cells, and I think is a great person to talk about this synergy that can be created between these two beacons. I appreciate your time.
It's nice to be here. It's like coming full circle. I started off with CIRM and stem cells, and here I am again. Some of you already know my story. There we go. Bob, I met you way back when in the beginning, and you were always such a strong supporter for me and all of us who didn't really have a voice at the time, and Sherry and everyone. And if you don't know about me already, I first started struggling with NMO about 7 years ago, and I was doing some volunteer work in Tibet. And I started going blind in the middle of nowhere, no running water, no electricity, at a Buddhist nunnery. And that was, I'd never even been in a hospital before. I'd never had any health issues, and that's where it all began. And a very confusing start to what's been a very confusing journey. So it was fitting that that's how everything started. But what I'd really like to do is to use this time as wisely as possible. And so what I'd like to try to communicate to you are the ideas and the issues that I think a lot of NMO patients want you to know about. And really what I want you to understand is why this disease, which is relatively rare, is so very worth increased attention and resources. To me, it seems like one of the most difficult aspects of NMO and the journey as a patient have been the psychological challenges that I've dealt with. Our bodies are surprisingly resilient, but the human spirit takes a really solid beating. When I talk to people about NMO, they're usually curious about the physical symptoms and the complications of NMO, and I can't blame them. It is a truly bizarre disease, just like most autoimmune conditions are. I mean, you have temporary bouts of blindness, paralysis, your body's buzzing with electricity, one side of your body is burning, the other side is freezing simultaneously, and it sounds ridiculous. And it sounds like a made-up science fiction disease. And try explaining it to someone who's not in the medical community, and chances are they may not even believe you. But after living with NMO and also lupus for the last 7 years, I've had the opportunity to really grow in my understanding of the disease. When I began battling this condition, the main priority, as it is for all patients, is to tackle the immediate acute bouts of blindness and paralysis. But after that, when you bring those under control, you begin to see that NMO is going to be a part of your day-to-day life. And then, as you start living with it, you see that it's not just a part of your life, it's going to take a toll on your family and your caregivers. And whether it's right or wrong, a lot of guilt comes with that. I don't think it would be untrue of me to say that most patients are painfully aware of the burden we place on others just by simply still being alive. For NMO patients, losing control of your body is demoralizing and humiliating. Your legs don't feel, your eyes don't see, your organs aren't functioning properly. Pain interferes with your social interactions and work. Everything is placed on hold until you can manage to get your body under your control again. I often describe autoimmune diseases as the epitome of self-destructive behavior. When I was diagnosed, there was no test to tell whether or not I had NMO. My only diagnostic options were spinal taps, MRIs, and the fact that I was going blind and paralyzed. There were very few resources to help me understand this disease that at the time I knew of as Devic's disease. I'd never heard of it before beyond that. And like many NMO patients of the time, my family and I packed up got in the car and made the drive through the desert to the Mayo Clinic in Arizona. That was really the only action any NMO patient could take at the time. I mean, that's saying that they knew they even had NMO. Any information I learned about NMO was mostly word of mouth. Patients would hunt one another down on the internet, and we'd figure out what to do next together. A lot of mistakes are made that way, but that's really how we did it. You know, okay, so I'm in the hospital. Well, try 5 days of IV steroids. Then when you're out, you know, you start with Imuran. When you break through Imuran, then you try CellCep. When you break through CellCep, well, that's when the tough chemo drugs come in, and that's just how we did it. Internet, chat boards, things like that. And then there were those of us who were told that NMO was a form of MS. That was my issue in the beginning as well. And we were also told that the disease would progress like MS, and that was misinformation. Because of that, I lost the vision in my right eye, and I know so many other NMO patients who have lost something permanent to this disease. And you can see that not accurately understanding a disease it's more than just information. For a patient, something like that, something like misinformation about what a disease really is, it's dangerous, it's disabling, and it's extremely costly. I want you to understand, so I'm going to say this again, that because we didn't understand what NMO was and its relationship to autoimmune diseases and MS, I sacrificed half of my vision permanently, gone. And as a dancer and a martial artist and a student, all the things, I mean, that any human being wants to do, that was, to me, a huge sacrifice. But now, here I am 7 years later, and it's like the world of NMO has turned upside down. We have diagnostic tools like the NMO IgG blood test, and there's new treatment options like the biologic drug Rituxan, which I'm currently on. And so I really think with these tools we can prevent some of this permanent disability and improve the quality of life for NMO patients, but we still have to get to the patients. And in a rare disease community, finding someone just like you can be extremely challenging. What I think is really amazing is that a lot of great moments in science and medicine, when you look back at them in history, they were blessed by timing. And as far as NMO goes, I really feel like the stars have aligned. We've got amazing researchers, amazing physicians who you heard from earlier, incredible advocates like Victoria and the foundation. And now the patients are jumping on to that bandwagon as well. And I feel like NMO has finally made its mark as a disease, and it's exciting. Strange thing to be excited about, but for me, it's exciting. It's certainly not the Devic's disease I knew of 7 years ago. And the energy and enthusiasm and the brilliance that have grown so quickly around NMO are due to Victoria and the Gussie Jackson Charitable Foundation. Victoria cures a disease like she runs a business, with a watchful eye and very little tolerance for, I'm sorry, I couldn't think of any other way to say this, but very little tolerance for bullshit. She's amazing. And what really means a lot to me is that this model is working. We are getting somewhere. And for me to say that, Victoria knows. I don't trust people very often. You don't when you get sick. I'm not saying you live as a pessimist, but you just put your guard up. Because everybody's got someone who can cure you with something or whatever, and you just learn to be a bit more guarded. And it took me a long time to believe her. But I do now. And it's exciting to see that we have this team with this shared vision that's actually making real practical progress. And for patients with chronic illness, that model, whether they know it or not, affects them too. I also have lupus. And when you're battling with chronic disease, I'm sure everyone in this room is affected by someone who has some sort of chronic illness. You know that there's not just one culprit. There never is with chronic illness. Whether it's a second autoimmune condition like mine, or a side effect from a drug, or just a long-term complication of the disease, you are always up against more than one enemy. So what we have to realize is that we all have to take ownership of this. It affects everyone, and we're all responsible for coming up with a new model and shortening that time from research to the patients. Me personally, as a patient, I want to see this through. I want to watch this disease grow from a rare orphan condition to an understandable, treatable, repairable, and curable disease. I want NMO to be, especially for the little ones I know that have it, I want it to be nothing more than an unpleasant memory, like chickenpox. It was miserable at the time, but eventually it was over and it left relatively few scars. Excuse me. When people ask me what living with NMO is like, the best answer I have to that question now is that it's sort of like an eternal cycling through the stages of grief. I started off as this eager, enthusiastic patient. I still felt pretty good, and I wanted to make a difference in public health and change the world. Then, I got a little rebellious. I didn't want to be sick. I wanted to pretend that everything is okay while I wasn't relapsing. And then when I kept relapsing, I got desperate. That's when Victoria and I met around that time when I was going to try and go to India. I mean, you feel like you have no options, and so you try anything that's out there. When I realized that that was not a feasible option, I kind of went into the angry stage. And I'm not proud of any of this. I'm just sharing with you the truth, what it's like. And I was angry. I wasn't angry at God or anybody in particular. I was just so frustrated. And then I went into a sort of, fatalistic phase where I didn't care anymore. I was just tired, and I wanted to be done. But I'm really happy to say now that I think I've come to a place of reconciliation. I'm okay with where I am, and it is what it is, and it's certainly not the worst thing in the world. We all have issues, and it's all relative. I think the difficult thing is that you feel like your body is this elaborate experiment in chemistry, and it feels like there's no way to control or predict the course of the disease, and all I can really try to do is keep up with it and attempt to repair any collateral damage. But when you're exhausted and you're grieving the loss of your health and your former life, battling an overactive immune system seems like an overwhelming challenge. And many patients don't have the resources or the time or the energy to maintain optimal health. Often a successful day is getting to the grocery store, doing some laundry, and working for a few hours. For an NMO patient, that brief, eventless day can be exhausting and physically draining. But there are good days too, when you almost feel normal. On those days, it's like an out-of-body experience for me. It's exhilarating. You feel energized and excited about life. I feel like I could live forever on those days. And even if a cure for NMO isn't found during my time here, I would settle for just more of those days. And I know people prefer, when I speak about my diseases, that I do so in a positive and an inspirational way, but I also know that everyone here is wise enough and aware enough to understand that speaking about disease honestly is more useful than soliciting tears. And to be very honest with you, it has become beyond difficult to live as a chronically ill citizen in this country. The cost of healthcare is draining our financial resources. The federal assistance programs are not designed for the chronically ill. They narrowly serve a population with acute needs, and they don't take into account the needs of an increasing number of chronically ill individuals in this nation. Chronically ill individuals cycle in and out of good, mediocre, and bad health. We don't have, starts and stops. It never ends. And you need a system that can accommodate that, and we don't have that. Social Security, disability, Medicare, all those programs, they haven't evolved to meet the needs of this population. And so there's a gap, and there's a gap in the research as well. We're fortunate to have foundations like the Gussie Jackson Charitable Foundation because it's helped filling in some of those gaps. But that burden can't rest on the shoulders of one organization alone. The research that the foundation is supporting is going to help define the NMO community. It's going to help us better identify our needs, our treatment options, and what I think the critical information for most of us patients, and what we really want to know is how many people really have this and how long am I going to live? I've never really gotten a good answer to that question. In addition to research, orphan to NMO patients need to be sifted out of the rest of the autoimmune and rare disease community. We need to make sure that they're receiving the proper medications and that they have a community of patients just like them to turn to. It's fair, it's the right thing to do, and it's what we need to give them. All autoimmune diseases have to be laid out like puzzle pieces, thoroughly studied, understood, and then we need to see how they fit together as a whole, because they do. I've been fortunate enough to work with a variety of disease advocacy organizations during my time in public health. And even though as a result I'm a bit cynical and interesting at times, I've recognized the proof and the action that Victoria's actually put on the table. And she's been willing to put her money where her mouth is. And so fighting for NMO has been a completely different experience for me now. The foundation has actually come to us, the patients, listened to us, treated us with respect, and recognized our firsthand knowledge of the disease as valuable. The relationship between patient, researcher, and physician has to evolve if we're going to make steady and efficient progress in the field of rare disease. I think that NMO will become the model for rare disease research because it is working. We are all working together now, and we have a shared hope of getting there faster. I started this journey with stem cells, Proposition 71 in CIRM. I've always believed that the future of NMO, which is actually my future as well, will involve stem cells. And it's such a joy for me to be here today with two organizations that I care so deeply about, talking and sharing ideas, finding ways to work together. In this country where healthcare is bankrupting me and millions of other patients, we need this. We need you. We need to see action and progress. We need to see that people still remember us, want us to keep going. Being a patient with a rare disease is lonely and isolating, and often it feels like we're screaming from a mountaintop trying to get the attention of anyone who will listen and help us. Most of us give up, not out of anger or laziness. We're tired. We're just trying to meet our most basic needs: food, shelter, health care, on very small incomes, if any at all. Your willingness to be here today, giving your time and your energy and your support, is what we cling to. Like I said, we need you. I need you. There's so few people who want to fight this battle. So thank you for that. And I truly hope I'm here for all of it. I want to see the cure happen, and I want to see the positive impact it makes on the patient community and in the world of NMO and rare disease. That's all, thanks.
Well, on behalf of all of us, I'd like to thank you for this phenomenal presentation. I'd like to thank the Drs. Yeaman and Greenberg for their dedication and their scientific work. I'd like to thank Candace Coffee for her eloquent, empathetic, and humanizing voice. And every voice needs a champion. And Victoria, you are a great champion. Thank you. Thank your husband, Bill Guthie. Thank you for what you're doing, the models you're creating. And as you have said today, the answers to orphan diseases may, in fact, ironically give us the answers to many autoimmune diseases. They may, ironically, unlock the ways to mitigate or cure some of the greatest diseases that have plagued mankind over the centuries. It is voices like yours, Candace, championships like yours, Victoria, that will show us the way. Thank you. Thank you very much.